This is the Weigh-In Podcast by Ben Watt Chestnut and the occasional pop-in Sebastian Romero. What we have for you today, we're going to talk about the Terence Crawford situation stripped by WBC. He was stripped of the belt by WBC, and we're going to break down that going on. And, as we like to say, whatever else comes up in the time of recording. But nonetheless, we're going to come out and just lay out the few emotions that come out in the beginning of this. Really we're gonna get down to the nitty-gritty here, and that's because it's sad situation, but nonetheless it's another organization thinking they're better than others. So I guess we're gonna get down to that. But nonetheless, that is this week's weigh-in. So we jump right into this one. First and foremost, every other organization accepted what Crawford gave them. WBC turned around and said, well, no, it's still going to be our decision. So they turned around and wanted him to pay more. So really what it came to is WBC, I believe, if we're correct on what their fees are here, they wanted him to pay around $300K, and that was not what they wanted him to pay at first. So let's get it straight. So the WBC fees, we're going to get down for you. We're going to get you. The standard was a 3%. So we talk about it was a 3% fee off the bat that they came out to you owe 3%. And with everything that all things said in here, then they come down to a 0.6%, which is that 300,000, around that 300,000. But Terence Crawford was getting at, so this was a statement that was Terence Crawford's statement via we found this on via ESPN. Terence Crawford said, I ain't paying bleep beep bleep. Crawford said, defiantly calling out WBC President Mercutio Salzman by name. He said, what makes you better than any of the other sanctioning bodies? What makes you better than the WBO, the IBF, or the WBA? Crawford continued, everybody accepted what I was giving them, but you, the WBC, think you're better than everyone. You want me to pay more than the other sanctioning bodies because you feel like you're better than them. So that was Crawford's statement, and I'm going to put it out. I don't disagree. If the sanctioning bodies, if all the other bodies charge the same thing and say, hey, you're giving us this, that's okay. That's okay. This one, Mercutio comes out now and says, oh, no. No. I want 3%. I want 3%. And then he comes out, he says, no. I want 0.6%. I want 300,000. And I get everybody's like, I get what everybody else might be trying to say is, well, he made a lot of money for that fight. And I get that. He got a $50 million purse for that fight, but and this is what is really getting down here is, yeah, he made 50 million, but what y'all don't seem to understand, the cutman gets a percentage, the trainers get a percentage, you got gym fees, you've got training camp stuff that you do. He's got, at the same time, you get a new outfit, you get trunks for the fight, a jacket, you get, for them to sit here and act like Crawford doesn't have nothing to pay. And I think this is just absolutely crazy that it comes to this. And this is what really got me, really into this over this WBC situation. He was putting a lot of that 50 million purse to a retired fighters charity fund. He was trying to do a good thing. And for WBC to look and be like, oh, no, you owe us 3%. Oh no, we still at least gonna make 300,000. Where every other organization was like, accepted what they got. And this one was like, no. So, and Mercutio Salzman, described by the WBC president Mercutio Salzman, says as an unfortunate slap in the face. Um, it's not unfortunate. You didn't want to work with the fighter at all because here's the difference. Why could we not have gone? There are plenty of other ways to do this. You wanted to strip him of being undisputed, and at this point, you look at it this way: why not say, "Hey, you got to have these paid before the next fight. You got to have these." You come in and you're like, "Oh yeah, you're not paying them. Boom, stripped. Sorry." And to answer Crawford, Crawford's right. There's no bodies of belt that is different from one than the other. You're all the same. You're all world titles. You're all organizations. Not one is better than the other. One has done things better than the other. I think WBC has got a little full of themselves because they do a lot of things involving the amateur, and they have the WBC amateur bout for the people who are not professional and all of that. I think they kind of feel like they've done a lot, and they're getting a little full of themselves. But you're not better than one. You know, you're not. And I think in terms of that, stripping Crawford for something like this, let me ask you something. If this was Canelo, or if this was somebody else that had done it, or if this was, any other WBC champion, would you have done it like this? Would you have stripped him? And I'm just speaking to the early facts of the situation. I know obviously there's going to be more developments. And to sit here and I kind of feel like I kind of feel like it was bad on everybody's part. And I feel like it's just I feel like it wasn't right, but they're gonna handle things the way most will because I'm gonna give it to you straight. Not many folk thought that Canelo was going to lose that fight, and now you figure out your boy Canelo lost the fight. Now Mercutio Salzman is coming out and saying, "Oh, you owe the fees." I'm pretty sure there's times before that they have not ran after for their fees right away and have I'm not saying it isn't right away, but I'm saying you I am saying, hey, you're running after this, and I would understand if you say, hey, you scheduled another fight. Now you're dipping and dodging our fees here. But here's the thing: fight was in September. Canelo Crawford. So let's break this down. As we wanna let's break this down accordingly because we know fight. So let's break this down how we want. It was in September, Saturday, September 13th. So we now have gone basically October, made it a month. November made it two. December made it three. But this it's not really 3 because they had stripped this way before. They had stripped this weeks ago, a while ago. Stripped it in December, but early December. So it makes us think, okay, is there a reason you wanted to strip it so quickly and not say, hey, all right, let's negotiate a fee where you say, oh no, it's 0.6%. That's what we'll give you. Well, hold on here. Hold on here. You don't want to negotiate. You're like, oh, we reached out several times. Um, Maybe because everybody else accepted what they got, and then WBC says, well, no, 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 we're gonna dictate the percent. Kind of what it seems like here, but nonetheless, I say if you're unsure of any information I give you, I'll say what I always say: Google it. But I kind of feel like WBC should not have. Okay, that you're stripping belts because you're not getting paid. I think is an interesting situation. I also think, we gotta. It's like we said, we need an NJ situation here. Get the court involved and let them know that no, you can't just strip a belt left and right because just because you didn't get your fees the way you wanted them. It kind of feels like, all right, if you're stripping belts for that, you're you're just abusing your power at that point. You're like, hey, you didn't pay us, belt stripped. So I guess, and a lot of this, most of this came by question via questions because you wanted to know. You said, oh, you didn't break down the Crawford. What's going on? So that's what a lot of yous wanted to know. So this is I'm gonna answer it all. So let me see what I could find. So it's interesting that and this is what also we're finding out through some stuff that why this is something that's happening after the fight. You know, I thought, if you're gonna get your fees, you pay before the fight, not after. That's what I thought. But that's crazy. It really is. So this is they're coming out for the, and you would think that this would be paid before the fight. So then it would have never. I mean, if WBC had this big of an issue, you would have went before the fight and said, "Hey, Crawford, you owe us a sanctioning fee." And if it wasn't paid, then you go and then he doesn't even win the bout. But to come and say, "Oh, we'll do it after the fight," then come out and say, "I have a problem." Well, yeah, there's a problem, and it's just But I think everybody has mixed emotions about the fee paying, not paying by Crawford. But I kind of felt like my breakdown here is not whether it should or shouldn't have been paid. My breakdown here is couldn't there have been a better way to go around this without stripping the belt, you know? And I kind of feel like I get that Crawford is trying to do what he wants to do, but it's like everybody else was accepted what they were getting, and then WBC wasn't. So that's my breakdown: is that there wasn't Crawford couldn't have gave you a number or whatever. The negotiation could not have gotten better, but WBC says they reached out multiple times and there was no answer, and this was the last resort. So I kind of feel like it's an interesting development, and I think in terms of this development, it's gonna be interesting to what comes of this, because it's kind of like belt was stripped because fees weren't paid, but at what point do we say, okay, are you doing too much? And I'm not saying anything one way or the other, but what I am saying is that I will agree to this. I think both parties could have done better, but also as a fighter, multiple times undisputed, I don't understand how now this becomes a problem. The third time you become undisputed, that because the fees weren't paid. So I don't know. I don't know how finally now this becomes an issue. You know, it's like you always say. Sometimes you can feel there's more to the story, and when you feel there's more to a story, you don't really know till developments come out. But we know that WBC uh they I believe I'm gonna fact check myself before I say this though, because I believe I saw something on this. But I'm gonna see if I could find it. If I'm gonna fact check myself right now. Let's see. Do, 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 do. But nonetheless, it was more or less about it was about the fact that they were wishing him well. It was I think it was a lot. I don't remember exactly what it was, but it might have been. Yeah, it was something along the lines of that they were they were thanking Crawford. They were saying we wish him well in his journey ahead. And I was looking for it, but I couldn't seem to find it. But that's the interesting take here. So that's the interesting. That's the interesting thing that they were up there, and I don't seem to think I'll be able to find it, but unless pretty good, you know, pretty cool, pretty cool what was going on. So it's one of those things where it's fairly interesting in terms of the situation of what went on, and I thought I saw something. I thought I did, but can't seem to find it. But it was like they were signing they were explaining the Crawford situation very well, and I was gonna bring that up. Yeah, it's fairly interesting. It was what the earlier what everybody has talked about is so it's fairly interesting to what went on. I didn't end up finding it, but nonetheless, it's still the same situation here. Is that it's interesting, now that I sit back and I really break these down, parts of me feel like WBC did really try, but also parts of me feel like it's like, okay, why was this not charged before the fight? But I kind of feel my point is, did we have to strip the belt? And that's what I kind of got down to. Do we have to strip the belt? Um, but yeah, I guess you had to do what you had to do. But I think in terms of it, he's some of them they got a point. They got a point. Um, they got a point. You get $15 million. And I think before I made a statement about Crawford giving to Retired Fighters Fund, which is I was wrong on that piece of information. Crawford's not giving. It's not really going like that. It's okay. Crawford made his 50. I was wrong, but and that's me changing and fact checking myself. Crawford made 50. You make 50, and when you make 50, why? My question is, fees weren't able to be paid. So I really feel like there's more to the story here. I really feel like we're not getting all the story. I really do. Two sides. This, and I don't really know how many times this has actually happened in boxing, but this is interesting. That fees were unpaid and they stripped the belt. Really, it really really interesting. So I think that's something to look at. Now, here's what we here's it's just it's real interesting for all that's gone on here. And it's real interesting no matter how we try to draw this out. So basically what we got around to is the 0.6% was too high, and apparently with other sanctioning bodies he agreed to a lower percent. um I think that's just real interesting. So I don't know why this wasn't something maybe paid before the fight, but I think it's I think it's crazy. I really do that it got to that Terence Crawford lost his WBC. I think it's crazy. Real crazy. Real crazy. That went on. I think everybody could testament that this is I really do. Yes. So I got you here. So they signed a poster. It was a poster of Terence Crawford to wish him luck and success. I did find it. So yeah, it was with Mercutio's house. I really think when we turn and we look here, I think a lot of people say my standpoint is confusing, but I think my standpoint is this: why was it not charged before the fight? But I get why you wouldn't. You'd say, hey, he might not have won the fight, and that's why you say, hey, we'll let you pay it after. But I think in terms of it, I think you just gotta all across the board say, you know, how we can make sure this does not happen again. Um, and I really do think that it's a interesting sitch for that to go, for that to happen like that. And I think that's very interesting. Very interesting. So and what we're also finding out is this is not the first time this has happened. They say one of the names here. They got some names. That's a video in itself. But nonetheless, we're in the end, so we're gonna get down to this as we have got to you. If the standpoint was a little out in the air, I'm kind of I'm conflicted, as I would like to say. I'm conflicted here. I'm not gonna side with WBC on what their decision to strip the belt. I don't think they should have stripped the belt, but I also don't think they should have done what they did because Crawford agreed to lower fees with all the other organizations. I think they should have just said, "Hey, call it a loss and take lower fees," and they didn't want to. So that's how this got to there. That they weren't really willing to work with him because he worked with all the other ones on lower fees, got it done, but WBC said no. So that's what we got to. I think in terms of it, WBC could have acted better. They could have acted better. And I think this is finally highlighting an issue that has probably been in the sport for a long while, but it is what it is. But with that being said, this is the way, and I hope this provided the ones that had the questions some clarity to the situation. And if it didn't, always Google it. But nonetheless, this is the weigh-in by Benoit Chestnut and the occasional Pape Sebastian Romero. And that's all I got for you today. Weighing out. The weigh-in where stories ignite.